Please welcome Carnegie Mellon University's 10th president, Dr. Farnam Jahanian.
Well, good afternoon. It's so good to be with you, and thank you all for joining us. I am delighted to welcome our distinguished speaker for this President's Lecture Series event, the wonderful actor, director, producer, as well as an alumna and a member of the CMU Board of Trustees, my friend Tamara Tunie. I know, I should just step down and let her take over. I know this, I know. Well, welcome back, Tamara. So happy to have you here. It's also so wonderful to see such a great turnout this afternoon. In attendance, of course, are members of our Board of Trustees, members of our campus community, including academic leaders, administrative leaders, our wonderful faculty, students, and staff, and of course, members from throughout the greater Pittsburgh community. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for being here. Our honored guest today has appeared on the small screen, the big screen, on Broadway, and on stages around the world. Just a few examples to share with you, to give you a sense of her range. Tamara Tunie has acted in some of TV's biggest primetime shows, including filming more than 23 seasons of Law and Order SVU. She's also, you can applaud, I'll wait for you. She is also a Tony Award-winning producer, and she has appeared in films alongside the likes of Denzel Washington, Samuel L. Jackson, and Al Pacino, just to name a few. Beyond her professional accomplishment, Tamara is a dedicated philanthropist and volunteer. She's a founding member of Black Theater United and serves on the board of directors at Harlem Stage. These are both nonprofits that are devoted to supporting the performing arts in New York City. In fact, Tamara is such a treasure in New York City that they tried to claim her. In 2005, Mayor Michael Bloomberg presented her with the Made in New York Award. Yeah, you know where I'm going with this. To recognize her contributions in film, television, and theater. But here's the deal, folks. Mayor Bloomberg got it wrong. Tamara is and has always been a Pittsburgher. As some of you know, Tamara grew up in Homestead in a thriving Steel City mill town, of course. Her mother, Evelyn Gigi, who's here with us, still, she lives in Pittsburgh. In fact, she is in the audience, as I mentioned, right here, as well as Tamara's aunt and uncle, Vera and Uncle David. Thank you for being with us. Today, Tamara is still very much part of the Pittsburgh community, including through her contributions as a board member of the City Theater Company in the South Side. And in just a few moments, you're going to hear much more about Tamara, about her childhood, and her career. We're thrilled to have you here with us at this lecture series. Would you all please join me in extending a warm welcome to Tamara Tunie.
Hello, fellow Tartans. That's right. I am a proud Carnegie Mellon alum, and if you cut me, my blood runs black and gold, baby. I am so excited to be here this afternoon. I am honored, I am humbled, I am thrilled. There are so many emotions happening right now, and I just want you to sit back and relax and just listen to a little story that I'm going to tell you. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who loved to sing, act, and dance, and imagined one day she would do just that for thousands of people. She also loved math and science and was on the track to becoming a doctor, perhaps, when she grew up. But as fate would have it, her high school choir director was a graduate of the prestigious Carnegie Mellon University. He recognized the blooming talent of the now teenage girl and encouraged her to audition for this most celebrated institution of learning. So she drove her parents' station wagon, well, hearse, really, since she was raised in a funeral home, to the bucolic campus in the heart of Pittsburgh and gave what she had to offer. She was surrounded by hundreds of teenagers who seemed far more experienced than she was. After the audition, she drove home and waited. 1 month later, she received a letter saying she had been accepted to the musical theater program in those hallowed halls. That fall, she loaded up her parents' station wagon, well, you know, yet again, and moved into the dormitory of Doherty to begin her journey. After 4 years of rigorous training, she graduated from the legendary School of Drama, and with her BFA in musical theater in hand, loaded up her things in a rental car this time and drove to fabled New York City. After 3 months of doing a dinner theater here or a showcase there, she landed her first Broadway show. Once rehearsed and fitted for her costume, she found herself on the stage of the Nederlander Theater for her first performance. And when she looked to her right, there stood the legendary Lena Horne, for whom she was singing and dancing in the background. She said to herself, "I can't believe this is my life." The beginning. A couple of weeks ago was National Storytelling Week, and I was asked to submit a story that highlighted a pinch myself moment, a moment when I was in awe of where life had taken me. Sharing the stage with the iconic Lena Horne was definitely one of those moments. But there were so many more of those moments to come. Triumphant moments, like the one previously mentioned, but also challenging, heartbreaking moments where I would cry to the heavens, "I can't believe this is my life." And if I have learned nothing else on this journey, I've learned to keep it moving. And I believe in the power of storytelling. Since the beginning of time, human beings have needed to tell stories and listen to stories, from the cave dwellers to now, Instagram and TikTok. So let's continue my professional saga. Rewinding a bit from where we last left our heroine, the drive to New York City after graduation was not uneventful. My best friend from first grade to this day, Michelle, joined me on the drive to New York City. She had a cousin in Harlem she wanted to visit and was more than happy to jump in the car at the last minute to keep me company on the road. We traveled along the turnpike, and about an hour outside Philadelphia, the engine of the rental car began to smoke. I pulled to the shoulder of the road and stopped the car, turning off the engine. Michelle, who had been sleeping, woke up and said, "Are we there?" I said, "The engine is smoking." "Uh-oh, what should we do?" she exclaimed. Now remember, this is 1981. No cell phones, no GPS, no OnStar. So I replied, "Check under the hood." And that is exactly what we did. We popped the hood, got out of the car, looked at the engine, then closed the hood, got back in the car, started the engine, and continued our drive to New York City without mishap, dropping the car off at the rental company. We did what we heard you should do. We checked under the hood, and we kept it moving. Now, the interesting thing about joining the Lena Horne show on Broadway, Kiss Me, Kate was actually the first production I was cast in when I got to New York. It was at a dinner theater in Connecticut. After weeks of rehearsal, tech, and opening night, I woke up the next morning and couldn't swallow, couldn't talk, couldn't sing. I was rushed to a throat specialist who informed me that my tonsils had abscessed and he needed to lance them and put me on antibiotics. I just wanted to be able to do my show, so I said to him, do it, do it, do it. He told me to open wide, and when he came at me with the scalpel, I immediately had second thoughts. What if he nicks something he wasn't intending to do? What if he cuts my vocal cords? But I was desperate. I needed to sing to get back to my show and was willing to do whatever. Well, the doctor didn't cut my cords, but I wasn't able to sing for some time, so I lost the job at the dinner theater and, utterly dejected, returned to New York City. But I kept it moving, and I got a temp job at an accounting firm. That was my survival job for the first few years in New York. Most actors waited tables, but I could type. Thank you, 7th grade typing class. And it just so happened that a coffee cooler friend of mine at the firm was the son of Lena Horne's manager, and he shared with me that they were having a casting call. Well, you know the rest. When one door closes. After a few years of doing one musical after another, I found that I was being pigeonholed as a musical theater performer and not being considered for plays and film and television. I felt stuck and decided to keep it moving by changing agents. Fortunately, an agent who had the network of casting directors to move me in that direction had given me her card a year earlier, which I had kept. So I made the call. Now, the difficult part was that my current agent had tapped me from the chorus line at Pittsburgh Civic Light Opera, and I had been working with him since my arrival in New York City. We were friends, but business was business, and I needed to move forward in my career and break new ground. I hoped he would understand. So I fired him as nicely as a 26-year-old could, to which he threatened to hold me to my contract and or sue me, to which I replied, do what you will. He didn't do either. And after a while, we were able to remain friendly. But as soon as I made that change, I booked my first film. A little independent film called Sweet Lorraine, starring Maureen Stapleton and me, and a bunch of young, unknown actors like Edie Falco and Giancarlo Esposito. It was only a few months after that I joined the cast of the daytime drama As the World Turns and really learned the power of storytelling. Now, you might raise an eyebrow or even laugh. I mean, a soap opera? But As the World Turns did not just entertain. It also tackled some heavy social issues like interracial relationships, sexual assault, and AIDS. The writing was actually brilliant. And the fan mail reflected the impact the stories were having on people's lives. Assault victims coming forward to confront their abusers and seek justice. People examining their own biases and prejudices, etc. At one point, the FBI had to be called in for some of the hate mail we were receiving. This is when I knew that my chosen profession was meaningful and impactful in ways I had not imagined. Now, my mother will tell you I've always been a multitasker. And As the World Turns gave me the freedom to work on many other projects while I was on the show. But after 8 years, I decided to keep it moving and leave As the World Turns. The day after my last show, I woke up and the left side of my face was numb. I looked in the mirror and tried to raise my eyebrow and couldn't. I touched my forehead and could feel the pressure of the touch, but couldn't feel my finger on my face. I thought I'd had a stroke. I began to panic. But then I realized this was not a stroke. This is your body responding to, you quit your job yesterday, you walked away from the closest thing to security an actor will ever have. So I did some yoga and breathing exercises, and the numbness subsided. I was fine. The director, Casey Lemons, and I met as actors on the set of As the World Turns. We became fast friends and sisters. So when she turned her focus to writing and directing, she wrote the role of the young mother in the independent film Eve's Bayou for me. But when the film was finally green-lighted, she was told I was not famous enough, not enough of a Hollywood star to be in the film. I was devastated. I told her I understood. I would not allow this business to come between our friendship, our sisterhood, and she must make this beautiful film. Then I took to my bed for 2 days. I was heartsick and broken. But day 3, it was time to keep it moving, and I did. Next, and there were so many more nexts. In fact, years later, Casey directed 2 films in which I starred, The Caveman's Valentine with Samuel L. Jackson, and most recently, I Want to Dance with Somebody, where I played Whitney Houston's mother, the legendary Cissy Houston. To digress a little, thank you. It's a beautiful film if you haven't seen it, it really is. But to digress just a little, I am the voice of adult Eve in Eve's Bayou, the voice that opens and closes the film. So, take that, Hollywood. After a 5-year hiatus from As the World Turns, I was invited back for a 2-week stint that turned into 7 years. But I continued to work simultaneously in the other genres, doing Broadway, film, and primetime television, always keeping it moving. I believed in the power of yes, and that schedules could be worked out to accommodate my multitasking. And fortunately, the various productions I was involved with agreed. One of my favorite moments as a New York actor was the time I was starring on Broadway as Calpurnia in Julius Caesar with Denzel Washington. It was the evening of the first preview, and after the performance, Law & Order SVU picked me up from the theater for a night shoot. We finished at about 3 a.m. I went home, slept for a few hours, and arrived on the set of As the World Turns at 7 a.m. I filmed the episode until about 12:30 p.m. and then returned to the Belasco Theater for the matinee and evening performances of Julius Caesar. 3 jobs in 24 hours, and one of them 3 times. It was challenging and exhilarating, and only in New York City was it even possible. But this could never have worked if I had not done my part, being where I was supposed to be when I was supposed to be there, prepared and on point, ready to deliver, and I always was. Now, you might look at my robust resume and think, wow, she works all the time. And yes, I have been blessed to not have too much downtime between jobs. I've had long-term employment between the 15 years on As the World Turns and 23 seasons of Law & Order SVU, 7 of those years overlapping. But all actors will tell you that rejection is alive and well and always lurking just around the corner. We have to have thick skin and a strong belief in ourselves and our abilities to regularly be told, you're not enough, and keep pushing forward. You constantly wonder, am I too short? Am I too tall? Am I too light? Am I too dark? A few times I was asked if I could be more black. Now this utterly perplexed me because, as you can see, I am black. But that is a whole nother conversation. It took me many years to understand that what I bring into the room is uniquely mine, and to stop trying to figure out what they want, because more often than not, they don't know what they want until you show it to them. I learned to satisfy myself when I auditioned by setting out to tell a story the way I wanted to tell the story. I stopped trying to figure out if they wanted it like this or they wanted it like that, and decided to focus on what I wanted, how I wanted to be the character, how I wanted the character to speak, how I wanted the character to act. Coming to that epiphany freed me, and I could walk out of any audition satisfied that for that 10 or 15 minutes, I was in control and accomplished what I set out to do. Sometimes I got the job, sometimes I didn't. But I felt like I had taken my power back. It took me many years to learn that no is just an opening for an opportunity for yes. The first time I auditioned for Law & Order SVU was season 1 for the role of the psychiatrist. I didn't get it. For season 2, they were casting the role of the medical examiner and asked me to come in and read for it. I was in rehearsals for another project and couldn't make the audition, and I also had done the original Law & Order and 2 other Dick Wolf shows before, so I told my agent, I'd love to come in and read, but I can't because I'm being paid to be here in this rehearsal. They know my work from the other shows, so they should just offer me the part. Well, wasn't I cocky that day? But they did. And 23 seasons later, 23 seasons later, where is the psychiatrist? And the impact SVU has had, I cannot go anywhere in the world. Here's an example. I was working in London at the Old Vic back in 2022, playing Vice President Kamala Harris in a brilliant new play called The 47th. I had become friends with the security guard at the theater who would stand at the entrance to the theater lobby every performance. One day we were chatting and he said, you know, my sister is studying forensics because of Dr. Warner from Law & Order. I have had so many Black women tell me they or their daughter or their sister were studying forensic medicine because of my role on SVU. It showed them that this was a career a Black woman could do. Now, my Uncle Aubrey wanted me to be a doctor and was quite angry with my parents for allowing me to go into theater. What a waste, he told them. But I have been thrilled to play a doctor on television and impact the lives, goals, and dreams of multitudes of women everywhere. And I became my uncle's biggest brag. That's my niece, you know. Yes, that's my niece. I always knew she'd be successful. 9/11. The day the world changed forever. I was performing in a production of Molière's Tartuffe at the Shakespeare Theater of New Jersey and had been in 3 weeks of rehearsals and then tech and had gone back home to New York for Monday, the day off. That Tuesday morning, I was driving back to Madison, New Jersey to prepare for our first preview that evening and listening to the radio in the car when at 8:46 a.m., the announcer interrupted the music, saying an airplane had flown into the World Trade Center. I thought to myself, it's a beautiful day, sunny, cloudless. Who couldn't see the World Trade Center? At 9:03, the second plane hit the South Tower, and the radio announcer said we were under attack. By the time I reached the house, I was sharing with another actor who was from D.C., and the director of our play, a plane had flown into the Pentagon. The DC actor was sitting on the floor, staring at the television, tears streaming down his face. I sat on the sofa in shock. We couldn't speak. We just watched the news as they showed the planes going into the towers over and over again. And then, in horror, we watched them crumble. New York was on lockdown. No one could get in or out. I could not get home to my husband, and of course, performances were canceled until further notice. After 4 days of being stranded in New Jersey, New York reopened, and the theater decided we should perform. The cast was heartsick and vulnerable and saw no sense in doing the play. Why? When the world was turned upside down. And who would even come to see a Molière farce after one of the biggest tragedies in the history of our country? But we stepped onto the stage for an audience of about 30 people in a theater that seated 300. At the end of the performance, the audience of 30 rose to their feet and applauded and cheered as we took our bows. When we left the theater through the stage door, those same 30 people were waiting for us to thank us for giving them an escape for a moment from what we were living through, for sharing a play that showed what can happen because of religious zealotry, for telling a story. I got in my car and drove home as fast as was legal to a silent city. With all of my success in television, film, and theater in New York and around the country, it would take decades for me to be invited to perform on any stage in my hometown of Pittsburgh. In 2019, thanks to the leadership of the new artistic director, Mariah C. Kaminsky, I was offered the role of Prospero in The Tempest at Pittsburgh Public Theater. At the same time, I was offered a 2-person play at City Theater entitled The Roommate. When it rains, it pours. Feast or famine, as we say in the theater. It was suggested that it could go like this. I would rehearse The Tempest, and then once it opened, I would go into rehearsals of The Roommate while performing The Tempest in the evenings and matinees, then close The Tempest and go into performances for The Roommate. I was informed that a fellow CMU alum, who was a couple classes ahead of me, the beautiful actor Lori Klatcher, was also cast in The Tempest and was considering playing the other character in The Roommate. Are you following all this? So, being the crazy multitasker that I have been since birth, my mother would confirm that, and since Lori and I would be in the same boat, juggling both shows, I accepted. The plays were diametrically different. One was Shakespeare, the other was a contemporary piece. One was a drama with humor, and the other was a comedy with drama. But both moved the audiences in powerful and unexpected ways. Both had the audiences belly laughing in one moment and then reduced to tears by the end. After a performance of The Tempest, one man shared that he had been estranged from his sister for years due to some family grievance, and he was going to call her to begin the process of mending their relationship. After a performance of The Roommate, a woman shared with me that she had been stuck for a long time after her divorce, but this play has inspired her to start putting one foot in front of the other to get her life back. 2 great stories told by a wonderful team of artists on the stage and behind the scenes, affecting people, inspiring people. Now, the producing and directing trajectory of my career evolved organically. After years of working with the best actors, directors, designers, and crew members, and paying attention to what each person and department brings to the project, asking questions, and continuing to learn, grow, and gather tools to add to my actor's toolbox, I was approached by a colleague to join the producing team of Spring Awakening as it made its way from the Atlantic Theater Company to Broadway. Those are the 2 Jonathans who starred in the show. Now, I didn't know much about producing, but as I said earlier, I believe in the power of yes and joined the team. I approached it as an unofficial master's program in producing theater. And again, I listened intently at every meeting. I asked questions, and I came to really understand how difficult it was to get a show to Broadway. How it takes a village of people who believe in the show and will do whatever it takes to get it to the finish line. One of the lead producers recognized my commitment and ability to deliver and asked me to join the producing team of August Wilson's final play of his Century Cycle series, Radio Golf, which was coming to Broadway that same season. Well, of course, I agreed. Besides August Wilson being the greatest playwright in the last half of the 20th century, he was Pittsburgh through and through. And August had passed away at this point, so I had to represent. My biggest responsibility was to raise a sizable portion of the budget, at which I was able to succeed because of the help of some local Pittsburgh investors, I am proud to say, who believed in August Wilson and my passion to produce his last work. I continued to learn from that experience and went on to produce several other shows on Broadway, off Broadway, as well as regionally. And did I mention I won a Tony Award for producing Spring Awakening? Directing was similar. I was approached to direct an independent film entitled See You in September. At first, I declined, saying, but I'm not a director. But the writer was persistent. And after a while, I thought to myself, you have worked on so many independent films and have helped other filmmakers with your expertise and experience. Why won't you do it for yourself? So I said, yes. Before filming, I asked two director friends of mine for advice. Casey Lemons, who I mentioned earlier, told me to wear comfortable shoes. CMU alum Rob Marshall advised me to hire great department heads and leave them alone to do what they do. Excellent advice from both. After a lot of hard work and many sleepless nights, we completed the film and sold it, determined it would not be a paperweight gathering dust on a shelf somewhere. It was soon after that I started being approached to direct theater. Now, as a director, I am in a different position and have a different perspective on how to tell a story. Previously, I would tell my part of the story from the perspective of the actor and the character I was playing. Now, as the director, I had the bigger picture to focus on and which to attend. My job as a storyteller in this role is to make sure all the threads weave together to tell the story the writer intended to tell. Next month, I'm heading to Delaware Theater Company to direct a new musical called Stompin' at the Savoy, inspired by the life of Norma Miller, the most famous Lindy Hopper of all time. Now, I'd like to circle back to what I mentioned earlier. No is just an opening for an opportunity for yes. No is just opening an opportunity for yes. You remember that? Well, last spring, I was invited to Chicago to join the Steppenwolf Theater Company's production of Brandon Jacob Jenkins' new play, Purpose. At that time, Brandon had a hit play on Broadway, Appropriate, that would later win the Tony Award for Best Play. I was thrilled to join the cast. I was to play the mother of a well-known fictional African-American politically connected family in Chicago, whose son, a rising star in the political world, had just returned from prison for embezzlement, and whose other son had a secret. But here was the thing that made this experience different. The play was not finished. We started rehearsals with 44 pages, basically, the first half of the first act of what would ultimately be a 135-page play. Well, I had never done this before, but it was exhilarating, collaborating with the playwright, creating Mother Jasper together, and working with my fellow actors to create a story in a way I never had before. The playwright was still writing and making changes during previews, which forced us to go on stage with the pages. The audience loved it and felt like they were being included in this process of creating a new American masterpiece. And it was. It was a masterpiece. Purpose was a huge hit. It was on everyone's radar, including Broadway producers who flew to Chicago to see it and were blown away by the play and the performances. We were extended twice and broke all box office records in the history of Steppenwolf Theater. Everyone who saw it said, "This must go to Broadway." After we closed, I returned to New York. A few weeks later, I received a phone call from the artistic director of Steppenwolf and the commercial theater producer who had optioned the play, informing me that Purpose was indeed moving to Broadway. Great! But unfortunately, I was not moving with the show because the theater owners will not give us a theater unless we have Hollywood stars like Denzel or Robert Downey Jr. I'm sorry, what? Does this sound familiar? 30 years later, I mean deja friggin' vu. 40 years in this business, and rejection is indeed alive and well and always lurking just around the corner. Needless to say, I was gutted. It was like I had been eviscerated. I felt like my guts were on the floor. I could barely breathe. For those of you who might not understand, when an actor steps into any role, any character, they are stepping in with all of their being. Their whole heart, soul, blood, sweat, and tears. Their humanity. It's like giving birth and having your child snatched from your arms. This time, I did not take to my bed. I pushed back. I said, no, this isn't right. This isn't acceptable. You can't just use people and then dispose of them when you're done. Pointing out that the policy of Steppenwolf Theater historically has been when a show moves, all of the actors move with it. And by the way, I am a star. I can't go anywhere in the world without being recognized and asked for an autograph or a photo, well, selfie. And isn't that the reason I was invited to Steppenwolf in the first place? I mean, yes, my talent, but to use my NIL, for those of you who don't know that, that's name, image, likeness, to promote the show and get butts in the seats, which I happily did at every opportunity. So my agent and I did this pushback dance for about a week or so. And then I said to her, as my rep, I am passing this to you to keep pushing or not. I'm keeping it moving. So I turned my attention to the plays in development I was directing, meeting with the writers and composers over Zoom, getting on with enjoying my summer, and trying desperately to put it behind me, to keep it moving. But this one was hard. 3 months later, while I was here in the Berg doing POTUS at City Theater, and quite honestly, still licking my wounds from the Purpose betrayal. Yeah, I said it, betrayal. My agent and manager called to tell me I had been offered the role of Anita Dupree, the matriarch of an affluent Black family that was going to be the center of a new CBS daytime drama called Beyond the Gates. They sent me the first 2 episodes along with a beautiful note from the head writer expressing how she could not imagine anyone else in this role. As she was writing, she only saw my face and heard my voice, and how grateful they would be if I accepted this offer. Now, I never considered going back to daytime, particularly since soap operas had been going the way of the dinosaur. But I was intrigued and suggested getting on a Zoom call with the writer and executive producer to hear more. By the time I got off the Zoom call with them, I was convinced. Not only because of their desire for me to lead this family was so palpable and was balm for my wounded spirit, but the historical nature of it. This kind of show at this time, depicting this kind of Black family. Oh, I was in. Say hello to Anita Dupree. And the buzz around the show, the press and attention we are receiving, the impact that the mention of this show is having is something I have never seen or experienced for a daytime drama. Never in the history of sports has an ad for a soap opera played during the NFL playoffs. And if I had been moving to Broadway with purpose, I would not have been available for this opportunity that will reach millions of people all over the world. An opportunity that is literally changing the face of daytime television. And it's making my bank account really happy too. No definitely makes space for yes. In closing, I will share this. It has been my honor and privilege to use my celebrity status, which I say in all humility, and my resources to support organizations that are meaningful and making a difference in so many lives. In the arts, as Farnham mentioned, it is Harlem Stage, Black Theater United, and City Theater here on the South Side. Feeding people who are too sick to cook for themselves is God's love we deliver. Hearts of Gold is a not-for-profit that supports women and their children in New York City shelters and helps them transition out of the system. Last, but certainly not least, is Figure Skating in Harlem, a nonprofit organization of which I am a founding board member that supports academic excellence and instills life skills to young girls in the Harlem community through the art and discipline of figure skating to ensure they are champions off the ice, champions in life. Part of our creed is when we fall down, we get back up. Everyone, everywhere, can apply that creed to their own lives. Last week, I was at the Apollo Theater in New York City for the premiere of a new documentary, Harlem Ice, a 5-part series following our girls ages 6 through 17 and our program, which provides much more than ice skating lessons. It will air on Disney Plus beginning this Wednesday, February 12th, and I encourage you to watch. 2 episodes were screened that night, which were beautifully shot, and the subject matter inspiring. This was followed by a panel discussion that included the producer, the director, an instructor who was a 22-year-old alumna of the program, and 2 14 and 15-year-old sisters who are currently in the program and featured in the documentary. Just to give you an idea of the impact of this organization has had, we have graduated from this program more than 1,500 girls over the 28 years the program has served the community. And each one is smarter, more confident, more eloquent, and more ready to take on the world than the next. One of the sisters on the panel was asked, what she hoped the viewer would take away with them from watching the documentary. And this is what the 14-year-old said. This documentary is a story, and stories connect us. Stories reach our humanity. They are what make us human. Well, she took the words right out of my mouth. I have chosen a life of storytelling through the arts and entertainment. It's what I have been doing since my third grade production of Rumpelstiltskin. It is always my hope that the listener is somehow affected, somehow moved by the story that I share. These were just a few chapters from my 40-year career in show business. One day, maybe, I will write that book, as so many people keep nudging me to do. We all have a story. I hope my story today has moved and inspired all of you. Thank you.
Thank you for the wonderful talk. Thanks for being here. Thank you for your willingness to engage in this conversation over the next few minutes.
Thank you.
Would you please join me in thanking Tamara once again for being here. I want to remind our audience that I'm going to engage Tamara in a conversation with a few questions. But sometime during this next few minutes, I'm going to take a pause, and Bethany's going to help me out. There should be a Slido link on the screen. There it is. And a QR code that you can use to submit your questions. And then we'll try to interleave a couple of your questions also before we wrap up. So let's start. Your mother, Gigi.
Yes.
Who's here. She, of course, lives in Pittsburgh. In past interviews, you have credited her with inspiring you, instilling in you a strong sense of community. I want you to talk about growing up in Pittsburgh and talk about how your upbringing, your relationship with your mother influenced your professional life and your journey over the last years.
Yes, I was born at McKeesport Hospital, but I grew up in Homestead. And Homestead, was a thriving steel town when I was a child. And, I will tell anyone who asks, I had the best childhood a person could have. I had the best public school education a person could have. I was exposed to so many things through my public school education. I was exposed to the arts. I was exposed to sports. I was exposed to everything. And growing up in a blue-collar town, I have friends from grade school who are still my friends today. I mentioned my friend Michelle, who drove with me to New York. My friend Buddy Hobart, who is also a CMU alum. My friend Fran Saranka, who is a professor at Duquesne University. These are lifetime friendships. And we are convinced that growing up in Homestead and being what we call forged by the fire has impacted all of us, not just in our relationships with each other, but also in how we move through the world. My first work ethic example were my parents and the parents of my friends in the community, hardworking people, and then coming here and studying at CMU and surviving that rigorous program,
Sure.
Was another, it just mettled me, if you will. It mettled me to move forward. And my mom, she has always been my example of a doer. Mm-hmm. She's somebody who rolls up her sleeves and gets involved. She was an advocate and an activist before I knew what the word was. She was the first woman hired by U.S. Steel to be part of their security force. And there's a picture of her. I wish I had it because I'd have put it up on the board. There's a picture of her in her uniform and her helmet and her steel-toed shoes. And she looks like the most beautiful security guard you will ever see in your life. You know, but she was also, when I was in grade school, president of the PTA. She was also a council member of our town. You know, she's a person who says, and she would say this to us, my siblings, you know, if you see something that needs doing, do it. Don't wait for somebody else to do it. And so that has kind of been how I step into any situation, whether it's supporting a not-for-profit or whether it's my professional work. So yeah, Gigi, you know, when I'm asking interviews, you know, what women are your role models? I'm like, well, my mother, first and foremost, you know, and then I'll list maybe Lena Horne and Diane Carroll and all the rest of the fabulous Cicely Tysons and, you know, but first and foremost is Gigi.
Well, you know, Gigi, we have some opening in our public safety and security team here. If you want to join us anytime, you don't even have to interview. Just come on board. As we talk about Pittsburgh, when you think about growing up, how has Pittsburgh changed? Of course, it went through a terrible time, through a period of economic, essentially, devastation. And of course, it's come back in so many ways. But tell me about what has changed in Pittsburgh that catches your attention the most?
You know, I run into so many people who, when I say Pittsburgh, they still think, you know, pollution and black smoke and dirty rivers and all that stuff. You know, and then when they come to Pittsburgh, they're shocked and amazed, right? Because it is beautiful.
That drive through the tunnel.
Oh, you come through the tunnel.
Yeah.
My nephew, who's now an attorney and a father, when he was about 4 years old, he was driving with in the car seat. His parents were in the front seat, and they were coming, you know, through the Fort Pitt Tunnel, and it was at night. And when they came through the tunnel, and you know, the city opened up, this 4-year-old in the back said, "My Pittsburgh." You know, and I think that's how we all feel, right? But you know, it's interesting because, like I said, you know, growing up in Homestead was safe. You know, it was a community. You know, everyone knew each other. All families knew each other. You know, you couldn't get in trouble, you know, 4 blocks away because by the time you got home, your mother had heard about it from 5 different people. You know, and it was that kind of safe community that was supported by the steel industry that was there. And as you said, when the steel left Pittsburgh, it devastated Pittsburgh and it devastated my hometown. And those jobs that were lost, those opportunities that were lost, created a space and a gap for drugs to come into the community, for people to leave the community, and it really took its toll on my hometown. What I'm seeing now, you know, as Pittsburgh has come back over the years and has grown into more of a white-collar town, and, you know, now we have tech, of course, and, you know, the Googles and the moving in, and it's fantastic. However, what I would like to see more of is the financial impact of that reaching into the Black communities in our town. There is still a very, you know, strong gap between those resources coming into the Black communities here in Pittsburgh. So I would really love to see more of that happening.
And I think the sentiment that you shared is echoed by so many people in town. From the business community to the public sector, private sector, I think we all agree with you. I want to pivot about your experience at Carnegie Mellon. You know, of course, CMU is a beacon for performing arts in Pittsburgh, but also nationally. Are people surprised to learn that you studied at CMU? And if so, what do you tell them about your experience at Carnegie Mellon?
Yeah, when I tell people I'm from Carnegie Mellon, you know, I studied at Carnegie Mellon, generally their reaction is, well, of course you did.
Yes.
Of course you did. Because everybody who's on Broadway is a CMU alum, you know.
Absolutely, yeah.
I have a best friend who I would attend Broadway shows with, and her name's Duana, and, you know, we'd sit down, and the play would start, and then at intermission, we'd look at our program, and she would read the program, and it was like the lead, who's fantastic. She was like, of course he went to Carnegie Mellon. Of course she went to Carnegie Mellon. You know, so it's wonderful that, you know, when I say that, people acknowledge and acknowledge the university for what it has launched into the world through these talented people. But I also, I think that, you know, like I said, I was so happy to survive getting through there. What was the second half of your question, though?
It was, well, you partially answered it, which is, you know, what do you tell them about your experiences?
Yeah, well,
I guess you tell them, I'm lucky to have gotten through.
I'm lucky to have gotten through, you know, because back in the day, is that John Wells I'm seeing?
No, but he'll be here.
Okay, because I heard he was going to be here. I thought maybe I saw him way in the back.
He's actually our next presidential speaker in a couple of months. There you go.
So when we were at CMU, you know, there was the policy of cutting you if you did not make the grade, you know, and so every year, at the end of the year, you know, we would all be holding our breath, hoping that we were not being dismissed. But what I take forward with me and what people notice from my training here at Carnegie Mellon is how I treat other artists who are below the line, as we say. And below the line in film language means the crew people, the people who build the sets, who, you know, run the cameras, above the line are the actors. And it's the below the line people, you know, and I have such respect, and I tell them, I said, look, I had to build sets at Carnegie Mellon. I had to build costumes at Carnegie Mellon. I said, so I'm not going to disrespect other people's work by not treating it in a way that is, you know, honoring what they're contributing to the movie, to the play, whatever. When I'm on a film set or a TV set, inevitably somebody from the wardrobe department will say, you work in the theater, don't you? You know, and I would say, yeah, I do. And they say, we know because you hang up your costumes when you take them off. You know, and my response was like, doesn't everybody? So I'm constantly, you know, encouraging young people who I work with and teaching them. You know, I'm at a point in my life and my career where I'm the senior here, and I'm the mentor, and I'm the one who can pass the baton and share my experience. And I'm really experiencing this on this daytime drama, on this soap opera. There are so many people who are young actors or who have never done a soap opera. And a soap opera is a different animal. It's a different beast, you know. And so I'm able to share with them and give back to them and teach them. And I always tell them the most respectful thing you can do is hang up your clothes. Nobody's here to be your mother.
That's really good advice, actually. I wish somebody had given me that advice when I was a kid. But more seriously, the comment you made about CMU's presence on Broadway, I mean, this was a real revelation for me over the last decade, being at Carnegie Mellon. Not only we dominate on the stage, the truth is that from production to directing to set design to costume design, we dominated, including technologies behind the scenes. There is so much goes on in producing a play, and it's amazing how CMU students, alum, are trained in all aspects of the business, which is really quite amazing, because we see the stars and we think that's it, but so much happens behind the scenes. And in fact, we actually train all of those individuals, gifted individuals.
Absolutely.
Let me pivot. I have so many questions for you, but we can stay here till like midnight, for example. But more seriously, I want to talk about the soap opera, the daytime soap opera that you talked about, Beyond the Gates. which is to premiere in a couple of weeks.
February 24th at 2
On C-
p.m. on CBS.
On CBS.
It also will stream on Paramount Plus.
There you go. There's your ad. You played the lead role of the matriarch of an affluent black family in D.C., Maryland, Virginia area. It's the first daytime soap opera in the history of television to center on an African-American family at its core. So you briefly talked about it, but tell us about the genesis of this. How did it come about? And from your perspective, and what do you think is going to be the significance and impact of that? Not only on the entertainment industry, but on society.
Yeah, it emanated, it's the brainchild of our executive producer, Sheila Carruthers. And I'm sorry, that's Julie Carruthers. Sheila, oh gosh, I'm having a brain. I'll get back to that. But Sheila.
Someone Google it.
And she, Ducksworth, Lord have mercy.
There you go.
Sheila Ducksworth.
Got it.
And CBS and the NAACP formed a partnership 4 years ago to address the lack of representation on CBS. And so Sheila Ducksworth was tapped by the NAACP to be the lead on this initiative. And Sheila had always had in the back of her brain that she wanted to do a soap opera that centered around a black family. And so she reached out to Michelle Valjean, who is the head writer. And Michelle has had 30 years writing daytime television. She's been on General Hospital. She was on Bold and the Beautiful when Sheila stole her away. And the two of them, got their heads together and started creating this. And so that was 4 years ago. And so, plodding along, putting one piece in front of the other, in front of the other, in front of the other, finally getting to 2024, where the green light and ready to go, and now able to cast. And so that's when they started reaching out for the actors who were going to play this role. And I have to tell you, it's as we said, the show, the black family is the center of the show, but it is a multicultural community. We have representation from everyone on the show. Asian, Hispanic, white, black, everybody. Everybody's there. You're going to see everybody, which makes it incredible, and so different. Because when I was on As the World Turns, I was the only contract black actor on the show. And with that came a lot of responsibility. Sure. And when we were doing the interracial storyline and getting letters, some of the letters that the head writer was getting and the producer were getting were why, Jessica, which was my character, she was in a relationship with this black guy and that didn't work out. She was engaged to this black guy and that didn't work out. But now she's married to the white guy and they live happily ever after. What is that about? And so they shared with me, they're like, we're getting, And I said, look, when you only have one black actor on the show, whatever story you give them is a representation of what you think. I said, so until you have more than one, and you can tell multiple stories, because black people are not a monolith. Our community is not a monolith. You have to be able to have multiple stories. And so now on this show, because there are multiple black actors, there can be multiple stories. And that's one of the biggest differences between where we were then and where we are now.
That's a great observation. I can read between the lines.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're hoping that is going to be the long
Yeah, exactly. And the writing staff, representation is everything, right? We know that. Sure. And the writing staff, is predominantly African American, but we also have Asian writer, we have a Hispanic writer, we have white writers, you know what I mean? And when I was on World Turns, there was one black writer. And when you're the only black person in the room, right, it's challenging to be able to speak truth to power, if you will.
Of course.
So it's good.
So I went on IMDb and saw that your first show credit was in 1986. Now, it was a murder mystery TV series called Spencer for Hire.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, I got to admit, I remember that show.
It was good.
It was a good show, absolutely. Yeah, it was a good show. The fact that I remember it. So, now, let me just give a couple of pieces of information that's sort of the context for my next question. Since then, you've worked on shows like Sex and the City, Chicago Hope, The Good Life, The Good Wife, rather, Law and Order, of course. You've earned a Tony for your debut as a Broadway producer on a musical called Spring Awakening, as you discussed it during your presentation. And you also shared the screen with some of the Hollywood's biggest names. It's quite incredible. TV, theater, film, across the board. So how do you approach the differences between television, film, theater production? How do you actually approach it? They must be radically different in terms of, as far as an actor is concerned.
It is different. And, when I left Carnegie Mellon, I was a theater actor. And so I really had to learn how to work with a camera. And As the World Turns gave me that opportunity. I would watch my performance on the show early on and see that, I was too big, because in the theater, you're playing to an audience and you're trying to reach the person in the last row as well. So you're projecting your voice, and whatever expressions is a little bigger, etc. But when you're working with the world is the size of the camera, right? That's the size of the world. The stage is the entire stage. You can look wherever you want to when you're watching a play. You can look over there, you can look over there. But the director and the editor have complete control of the world of that camera. And when the camera is on your face, it's really about what's happening inside more so than what's happening outside. And that is expressed through your eyes, or a subtle gesture, So I really had to tone down, if you will, the exterior of my acting, but still be very much alive on the interior. And that was the biggest difference, And so I didn't leave here with that. I learned that on the job. And now I try to share that and teach that to other young actors who are coming up. Just the difference.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm trying not to look at the camera, by the way. So, but let's talk about the entertainment industry. Bethany, are you going to be ready for us for a couple of questions? Because I'm going to ask one more question and then invite a couple of audience questions. We're at Carnegie Mellon.
Yes, we are.
I want to talk about the entertainment industry, but I really want to talk about AI. AI is, of course, everywhere, impacting every segment of our society, every sector of our economy. What are some of the ways that you see AI is impacting your industry, the entertainment industry, and what are you most anxious about, or probably what are you most excited about when it comes to AI and its potential impact on your industry? And I know that we are just scratching the surface. I recognize that if I ask you this question 2 years down the road, it may actually be a completely different answer.
Absolutely.
But from where you sit, your vantage point, what do you think about the impact of AI on your industry? What's exciting? What's making you anxious?
Before I go into it, I just want to talk about that commercial that aired last night during the football game, where they went back in time and it was computers and everybody was like, ooh, computers, and then cut to, and now it's ooh, AI, But here's what I know. A couple of years ago, I'm sure you all were aware, the actors went out on strike. The writers went out on strike first, and then the actors followed. And one of the big issues was AI and how to navigate this new technology. Sure. And one of the things that we were concerned about, for example, one was, my show, Law and Order, airs all over the world, right? And in most countries, it's dubbed by an actor there who who will say the words, along with my image in their language. Well, one of the things that AI can do is take my voice and have me speak this other language fluently and air it, where I will not be getting paid for that, nor would the Chinese actor who was going to dub my voice. And so it's about employment at the end of the day, right? And it's about keeping jobs for actors and writers and directors even, So the question becomes, how do we navigate this new technology and protect jobs and protect human creation? Because at the source of creativity is the human spirit. And AI does not have a human spirit. You can program it, you can tell it what you want, you can tell it what to do, but it does not have that initial idea, that initial creativity. And so the question for our union, for the Screen Actors Guild, became, okay, how do we navigate and protect, the membership and their likenesses, their voices, their work? And so the representatives from SAG, our attorneys, our reps, they powwow for months with the studios and et cetera, and came to an agreement on how we were going to move forward with using people's images and likenesses, what can be done, what can't be done, what permissions have to be in place, et cetera, and having the ability to police that as well, right? And also leaving it fluid, because we know as time goes on, things will change. And so that was the biggest address. So it's trying to navigate embracing the new technology, but at the same time, staying true and honest to the work that we as artists in every genre and department of our industry bring to the world.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it's a challenge I think every sector of our economy is experiencing. You don't want to stifle innovation.
Not at all.
You cannot prevent progress from happening. The question is, can you make progress? Can you advance innovation and discovery and creativity?
Absolutely.
Without really undermining human spirit, without undermining essentially people's ability to earn a living, fundamentally. And I think this is something that I think every sector of economy has to deal with.
Absolutely. And being, here at Carnegie Mellon, Carnegie Mellon I call Carnegie Mellon the right brain, left brain school, right? Because we have such a strong, arts community and sport, and at the same time, tech and robotics and engineering, et cetera. And so it's always how can this couple, coexist and move forward together?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we have for 100 years.
Yes.
And hopefully we'll lead the world. Bethany, let's go to a couple of questions from our audience.
Sure. First one, what do you draw on for strength in the face of rejection? Is it faith, friendships, creative vision? And do you have any rituals when your ego takes a bruising?
I'm sorry, what was the last part?
Rituals that you do when your ego takes a bruising.
Yes, indeed. Music. Music is always part of my healing process. I put on a record and I dance. I put on a record and I dance.
And what record, just so that we know?
Okay. Two that really got me through a really challenging time was Mary J. Blige, Fine. I Won't Change My Life. My Life's Just Fine. And Pharrell's Happy.
Oh, yeah.
Those two, they really got me through. But it is a combination of faith, and when I say faith, it's both it's both religious, though I don't consider myself a religious person, but it's also a faith in myself and also a faith in physics. You know, and that might sound funny, but it is, because when I studied physics in high school, you know, the laws of physics just made sense to me. And it made sense to me that, you know, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. It made sense to me that, you know, energy doesn't die, it just changes shape. You know, so I just believe in that.
That's a Carnegie Mellon alum, by the way. Bethany, let's go to another question.
Knowing what you know now, what classes do you wish you'd taken or would recommend for aspiring actors or directors?
Thank you for that question, whoever asked it, because one of the things, and this is something that I'm actually working with a consulting company about, one of the things that I wish I had been able to do while I was here was to take some kind of business classes, some kind of accounting classes, if you will. You know, it show business, and the business part is really, you know, an important component. And, you know, I will share with you, for those who don't know, you know, historically, entertainers, you know, you hear the stories all the time about them, you know, making millions of dollars and then being broke, right? Because somehow they've been taken advantage of in some way, shape, or form. And, you know, several years ago, I worked with a business manager who embezzled money from me. You know, fortunately, it didn't devastate me, but it was a lot of money. And I thought that I had checks and balances in place. You know, I thought I had control of my finances, right? But when people set out to scam you, and particularly people that you trust and that you've had a couple of decades relationship with, you know, but I always believe in there are no mistakes if you learn from them. There are only mistakes if you don't learn. So I learned. And I'm working with a company called EduCore that is focusing on financial education for professional athletes and entertainers. And when we were, when we were creating the curriculum and the program, we actually came here, me and my team, we came here and we sat down with some seniors, you know, to talk about finances, et cetera, et cetera. So it was really great, and they were so appreciative. And so that is the biggest thing that I would say, and you know, just really having some kind of financial education.
That's
for
great
artists.
advice. That's great advice. In fact, I think in recent years, not only I think our students have the opportunity to take some of those courses, but we actually launched a whole minor in entrepreneurship. Part of it is being an entrepreneur. It doesn't mean you have to be in business or technology.
Right.
In fact, artists have to be entrepreneurs.
Absolutely.
You have to do everything.
You really do.
You
And
are the CEO of your company.
Thank you. Took the words out of my mouth.
And for that reason, actually, we have a set of courses that very first course in entrepreneurship does not require a prerequisite. You can be in the college. I remember having this conversation with our faculty who've launched it. I said, the student could be from our College of Fine Arts. It could be in computer science. It could be in business. It really should not matter. I think we have accomplished that, but there's more to do there. That's definitely.
Excellent.
We will make a note of that for our College of Fine Arts, especially. Business education.
Yes.
Okay. Bethany, one more question from the audience.
Has any role ever scared you to play?
Wow, scared me to play. Well, here's the thing.
As you're thinking about this.
Yes.
Okay, let me ask you a question that
Okay,
will
well,
help
hold
you.
that thought. No, I'm
it's
ready
gonna,
for
it's
my
gonna
answer.
lead.
Okay,
So,
go ahead.
How do you prepare for complex roles?
Okay, that kind of goes hand in
Yep.
hand. Perfect. If I'm not terrified of stepping into a role, then I feel like, why bother? You know? So every role that I've done has been daunting in some way, shape, or form. And so in preparation for complex roles, let's say, for example, I played Madame de Merteuil in Les Liaisons Dangereuses, right? Which, if you saw the movie, was the Glenn Close part, who was this diabolical human being. But at the core of her, she is still human. And so I'm always looking for, what drives the character to do the things that they do. What motivates them? Where were they damaged in order to behave this way? And I always tell young people who say they want to be an actor, they ask, what should I do? And I say, read everything, expose yourself to everything. Because as actors, we have the privilege to actually walk in somebody else's shoes when we're performing a role. And with that comes the opportunity to be more human and to have more empathy and more compassion. And I'm so grateful for that. It's really moving. It's really moving.
I want to ask a couple of quick questions before we wrap up.
Great.
You're the first President Lecture Series guest to also serve as a member of our Board of Trustees.
Well,
There you go.
that's a double honor.
I've had a pleasure of nominating you to serve on our board, and I'm so delighted that over the past few years, you've been on our board during very, very difficult times.
Yes.
For humanity, including the pandemic that society has dealt with. So I'm grateful to you for serving on our board. But here's my question for you. What are a couple of things you want to share with our audience, especially with our students?
Yeah.
From your perspective as a board member, that you think is important for our students to know?
Okay. I would say first and foremost, first of all, when you invited me to join the Board of Trustees, I was honored, humbled, and also confused. I was confused because my vision and understanding of what a Board of Trustees looks like is rich white men. I wasn't rich, I wasn't white, and I'm not a man, And so what I learned and what I appreciate about the board that has evolved under your leadership is how inclusive it is and how there are so many alum on our board, and people from, different cultures represented on our board, which I found very, very, very inspiring. And what I also learned, because as a student, you're kind of you're siloed, right? You're kind of in your college and in your world, and you don't quite know everything that's going on the entire campus and other schools, et cetera, et cetera. Being in this position has allowed me to see an overview, a bird's eye view, if you will, of everything that's happening on this campus and all of the inner workings. It's like really seeing how the sausage gets made, and the sausage that CMU makes is some of the best sausage in the world, right? But really, it was like, oh my gosh, all these different components, all of these different considerations that have to be, taken under advisement on how the decisions are made, which is very democratic. Yes. On our board, very democratic. How navigating differences of opinion, right, should be held up as an example to our country, right, and how to still work together for the good of the school. So I would like the students to know and understand that the leadership of this university and the board of directors and the staff and everybody who works on this campus, they lead with what is best for our students. That is what every decision emanates from. what is best for our students, what is going to help the culture, on this campus that's going to benefit the student body. And that inspires me.
Thank you. I want to echo something that you mentioned. In fact, today, and Bethany got this data point for me, Bethany and Catherine got this data for me, 78% of our board members are alum of Carnegie Mellon.
Wow, 78%.
It's almost 80% are alum of CMU. We have several others who are passionate about Carnegie Mellon, are members of the Pittsburgh community and so on. But, 80% of our board members are CMU, the 41 members that we have.
I think that's unique.
It's very,
I think that's unique.
It has changed so much over the last decade. Something else that you mentioned that I think it's really important to recognize is that when you talked about being inclusive, there are many dimensions to this. We're talking about board members that represent a cross-section of disciplines across
Yes.
Carnegie Mellon.
That's right.
From our College of Fine Arts to our policy school, computer science, engineering, our sciences, you name it, and of course social science and humanities. That's been a remarkable change on our board. Mm-hmm. Furthermore, we are an international, a global institution. We have board members who now live in other parts of the world.
Yes.
That are also board members. From where I sit, and members of our leadership team, our provost is here, can attest to this. It's amazing to see. By the way, these board members, they don't get paid for their service.
Yes.
In fact,
Let's
they give
clarify
us
that.
money.
I know.
No, it's the opposite.
Exactly.
As part of their service. But more seriously, they're there because we want their counsel, we want their advice. And you'll be surprised how well informed they are. They put the time into it. They support the university. They love the institution. And that's really the only reason they're on the board. So, case in point, with all the troubles that many of our peer institutions have gotten into, and we won't mention them, but some of the trouble that they've gotten into, notice how well behaved and how supportive our board members have been. It's because we've had very difficult conversations behind closed door about these complex subjects, but our board members do nothing but support the university and, of course, provide counsel and advice for Carnegie Mellon. I appreciate you and I appreciate our board. Final question for you. We have a cross-section of our students. We're, of course, recording this and so on. What one or two pieces of advice do you have for our students who are in the audience today, who are now dreaming of a career like yours, and they're just embarking on that journey? What one or two pieces of advice, do's or don'ts, do you have for them?
Oh, wow. I used to have this thing called the 3 Ps, but now I can't remember what they were. But I will say, being prepared, working hard, be ready so you don't have to get ready. All those things that you've heard before, and believe in yourself. And also understand that, life is fluid. And if at some point you've decided that you want to change direction and do something else, by all means do it. Don't feel like you're stuck because you said, I'm going to do this, that it must be, it's written in stone. Nothing is written in stone. And one opportunity leads to another opportunity. And a door might open that you weren't expecting, And also don't compare yourself to your peers. Everybody's journey is different. Everybody's time to arrive at wherever is different. Just trust and stay focused and believe in yourself, because you have the power and you are everything that you need.
Tamara, thank you for being here. Before we wrap up, we have a gift for you.
Oh.
We have a couple of our students who are going to join me on the stage in a moment. Ella Noriega, who's a senior major in music theater, and Donathan Arnold, who's a senior actor in drama. Come on up. As you're coming up, given that you're an alum of our drama school, in our College of Fine Arts. What we have for you is, I want to see if you recognize this, is a framed picture of you. And this is your performance in 1981 CMU production of Berlin to Broadway. There it is. Here, let's take a picture together. Here we go. You get in the middle. You get next to her. All right. All right. Let's take a couple of photos and then.
Where it's not reflecting. Is that good?
Yeah. She's a professional.
I know my light.
She's a professional. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Good luck to you.
And more importantly, let's hear it for Tamara Tunie. Thank you for being here. Wonderful. Thanks.